The Warlock is a fun class in Baldurs Gate 3. You basically just cast Eldritch Blast, maybe the occasional Hex, and that's it. Guide done, like and subscribe. No, there is more to that, so let's go through everything you need to know about the best Eldritch Blast bot in Baldurs Gate 3. Let's go! Let me know in the comments who your favorite companion is. Now, these class guides are designed to teach you the mechanics of the class and everything you need to know to succeed. I'll have a link to the playlist here. So starting out with the Warlock. Now, this is sort of a different type of caster to, say, the traditional wizard or sorcerer, in that you are a little bit more of like a battle mage archetype, if that's the direction you wanted to go, but you also do have light armor and simple weapon proficiency, whereas most of the other casters don't have any armor or weapon proficiencies. So you've got a little bit of flexibility there, and also your primary spellcasting modifier is charisma, so you're actually a really good talker in conversations to pass some of those ability checks. One key difference for the Warlock caster as well is that you have Warlock spell slots. Now, these are different to normal spell slots in that, one, you'll have significantly less of them, but they actually refresh on a short rest rather than a long rest. So in a single combat encounter, this means you can cast less spells in total, but over at the period of using those short rests, you actually get some of those spells back. So each encounter, you can still have some new spell slots that you can actually use. So let's start with the best race for the Warlock. Now, obviously, role-playing elements is obviously up to you, so you can pick whoever you like. But in terms of the Warlocks, because of their low amount of proficiencies, especially if you want to play it like a sort of a battle mage type, then consider something like, say, a human, a Githyanki, half-elf, or elf, because they have those extra proficiencies, like weapon proficiencies. So say if you wanted to use like a longsword or something, then an elf would fit that because it gives you that proficiency. Dark vision isn't as important as a warlock because you can actually get it as one of your eldritch evocations when you're leveling up. Though if you aren't going to do that, then definitely consider picking a class that has dark vision. And it's very similar with movement speed, right? Because you can learn Misty Step, you can just like teleport around the battlefield. So movement speed isn't as important, but warlock doesn't matter too much. Maybe pick one based on a proficiency if you want to use something else, or just pick it based on looks. That's up to you. The best skills are very easy to think about for the warlock because they are the charisma skills, so deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion, because charisma is our main modifier. For backgrounds, guild, artisan, entertainer, noble, or soldier are probably the best, though it doesn't matter too much because you're going to have a really high charisma anyway, so you can sort of use your background to get some other proficiencies if you choose. For ability points, charisma, as we've already discussed, should be on 17, and then you probably want to get your dexterity and constitution to 14 if possible, because dexterity for that extra armor class, because we won't be wearing a lot of heavy armor, and constitution for a little bit of extra health, as you probably take a bit more damage as a warlock than some of the other casters, because you can get into that melee range and use some of that sort of weapon proficiencies that you do have. At character creation, you'll also pick a subclass between the Fiend, the Great Old One, and the Archfey. At a very high level, these are eerily similar, except one major subclass focus difference, which we're going to talk about. So consider which one of these is more important to you. So for the Fiend, you will be able to heal automatically when you defeat an enemy via the Dark One's Blessing. So when you reduce a hostile creature's hit points to 0, your Patreon will give you a certain amount of hit points based on your charisma modifier. As a Great Old One, when you critically hit against a creature, that creature and nearby enemies are frightened until the end of the turn. And as an Archfey, you get Fey Presence, which allows you to charm or frighten creatures until the end of your next turn. Personally, I would suggest either Fiend or Great Old One, because their effects actually just initiate as sort of like a passive, just based on actions that you do. The Fiend is probably the stronger one if you're looking for some sort of extra survivability in that sort of battle mage archetype. But say if you just want to sort of sit back and relax in sort of ranged position, then the Great Old One for that frightening when you do critical hit is also valuable to have. As a warlock, when you're leveling up, you will make some important decisions, and the first one that you'll make, and you'll actually continue to make it as you level up multiple different times as different evocations unlock, is the Eldritch evocations. So initially you'll only have a limited amount of these options, but then the further levels you get, the more you'll get. There'll be more options at level 5, 7, 9, and 12. Now, as you're picking the options here, the first one you should absolutely pick is Agonizing Blast. Now, what this will do is your Eldritch Blast will get empowered by adding your charisma modifier to that. So every time you cast Eldritch Blast, you will add your charisma modifier to its damage, essentially just increasing its damage. So the further you get up your charisma modifier, the even more damage that Eldritch Blast will do, not only just including the fact that it levels up as a cantrip. Repelling Blast is again again in this same category in that it will empower your Eldritch Blast to knock enemies away. You can actually use this in some scenarios to like knock enemies off things and like kill them by them actually taking that falling damage, or say if they're up on like the rafters or something, you want to knock them down. It's definitely valuable for that. Now, we already touched a little bit on it, but Devil's Sight is an option to grab if you don't have dark vision natively as your class. It will allow you to see in the dark, which is useful for casting and things like that. And as you sort of get up the levels, it's really dependent on what makes sense to you and sort of what is interesting to you, though I would recommend to grab the Book of Ancient Secrets, as it will allow you to cast Ray of Sickness, Chromatic Orb, and Silence without consuming a spell slot when you cast. So it gives you more options as a caster, so you don't have to waste those 2 Warlock spell slots on these spells. And Chromatic Orb is great because you can deal multiple different types of damage with this spell, so you can sort of adjust depending on the enemy's resistances. The next thing you'll pick is a Pact of the Boon. Now, there's the Pact of the Chain, the Pact of the Blade, and the Pact of the Tomb. Each one of these will give you a different benefit. The Chain will give you a Service of a Familiar, so you can summon a Fey Spirit to help you either in combat or out of combat. The Blade is more of that Battle Mage focus, so you can either summon a Pact weapon or you can bind your existing weapon, which will add your spell casting ability modifier to that weapon's overall damage. So in this case, Charisma instead of Strength or Dexterity. And when you deepen your connection as this, you'll also gain an extra attack. So if you want to actually attack in melee range often with your Warlock, this is definitely the option you want to go. And then the last one is Tomb. Your patron gains a grimoire called the Book of Shadows, which allows you to cast Guidance, Vicious Mockery, and Thorn Whip. I personally think that you should go Tomb if you're looking for that mage route. If you want to go the battle mage, then the blade. But the Tomb route is really good because of guidance. Now, if your warlock is going to be your main talker, even if it's not, right, and you have a warlock in your party, guidance allows you to have a higher chance of passing those skill checks because you can add guidance to those skill checks, right? Like it'll pop up and you can add that extra 1d4, so you've got a higher chance of passing it. But you've got the freedom here to pick what you like. Now, the last decisions you'll make in the leveling up process is your feats, and I think you should grab Defensive Duelist if you're using a finesse weapon, which if you're playing as either will or in the most case, for the most part, you probably will be using a finesse weapon as a warlock. Now, what this will do is you'll allow you to use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, and hopefully this will cause enemies to miss. Make sure in your reactions you turn on the option to ask, because you can actually read what their attack roll is, right? Let's say that their attack roll is 12 and your armor class is 10, and then if you pick this, adding your proficiency bonus to 2, that'll make it 12, meaning that they'll miss. So you'll be able to tell exactly when they're going to hit or miss based on that pop-up, so you can choose whether to use your reaction or not. So just make sure you're reading that, but for the most part, this is a good way to avoid damage as a warlock. And then I would grab ability improvement to get your charisma to 18, or you could go performance, say if you just wanted to use some instruments, but that'll also get your charisma to 18 as well. Now, the best spells and cantrips is super easy, right? Just cast Eldritch Blast basically every combat turn. Like, that's all you sort of need to know, because its damage is so strong. It will also level with you, so as you level up, you'll be able to get initial cast of it. It's a valuable spell, plus with the charisma modifier, it's really, really good. I would also be using Hex regularly throughout your combat turns as a warlock. So Hex is a bonus action spell, which will give disadvantage to a certain ability that you choose, which isn't the main reason you'll use it, but that can be valuable. The main reason is that anytime you attack that target, it will add necrotic damage. So if you are using, let's say, Eldritch Blast, and you've got 2 casts of Eldritch Blast hitting that same target, it will do 1d6 necrotic damage for both of those Eldritch Blast casts. So it just gives you a flat damage increase to the amount of damage you do. Misty Step is also super valuable as a warlock, so you can teleport around as part of your spell slots. But otherwise, as a warlock, because you've only got 2 spell slots, Hex is going to consume one of those, and if you Misty Step once in that encounter, it's going to use it as well, so you've already used up those slots. So otherwise, just think about how you're using those slots and whether you're going to just cast Eldritch Blast, or do you even need to Misty Step. And we've already talked about like the Ray of Sickness, etc., that you get as part of your Eldritch Evocation, so you can cast in combat as well. A couple of quick tips for the warlock. Now, warlocks have that small spell slot pool, as we mentioned. After every encounter, you should be short resting as a warlock, just so you get those spell slots back. And they are great talkers, plus with guidance, you can pass almost any conversational check that you do need to if you want to be a talker. Really valuable for that. And the warlock and Eldritch Knight are unique in that there are some weapons in the game that are only useful for them, as they get additional bonuses if you do have a pact as a warlock or you are an Eldritch Knight. So pay attention when you do see those weapons, as they're really good to use if you can actually use them, as sometimes they're more sort of lean towards the Eldritch Knight. But I just thought I'd call that out, even though I don't usually do equipment in these videos. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.